morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Global Atheist News Roundup, dateline the 1st of February 2025. This week's headlines: Man who burned Quran shot dead in Sweden. Bishop of Liverpool resigns after assault claims. Authorities say at least 30 dead in Kumbh Mela crowd crush. Sexual abuse scandal. John Smyth, Jeremy Gauntlett, and the shame of the Anglican Church in South Africa. A bishop claims Justin Welby was treated like Jesus. Here is the news in detail. A man who sparked violent protests after burning the Quran has been shot dead in Sweden. Officers were called to a suspected shooting at an apartment in Hovsjö around 23:11 local time on Wednesday evening. Prosecutors told the BBC. They said Salwan Momeka was shot and 5 people had been arrested. The police force announced that he had died of gunshot wounds on Thursday morning. Local media reported that Mr. Momeka had been live streaming on social media around the time he was shot. Mr. Momeka, an Iraqi living in Sweden, was charged in August alongside one other with agitation against an ethnic group on 4 occasions in the summer of 2023. Unrest broke out after Mr. Momeka set fire to a copy of Islam's holy book outside Stockholm Central Mosque. The verdict, due to be delivered on Thursday, has been postponed after it was confirmed that one of the defendants had died, Stockholm District Court said. Mr. Momeka carried out a series of anti-Islam protests, sparking outrage in many Muslim-majority countries. Unrest took place at the Swedish embassy in Baghdad twice, while the Swedish ambassador was expelled from the city amid a diplomatic row. Swedish police had given Mr. Momeka permission for the protest in which he burnt the holy book, in accordance with the country's free speech laws. Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said Sweden's security services were involved in the investigation because there was obviously a risk that there were links to foreign powers. The Bishop of Liverpool has stood down after allegations of sexual assault and harassment were made against him. The Right Reverend Dr. John Parumbalath said he didn't want to be a distraction after claims made by 2 women were outlined in a Channel 4 News investigation. He said it was not a resignation occasioned by fault or by any admission of liability. One woman had accused the bishop of kissing her without consent and groping her in Chelmsford in Essex when he was Bishop of Bradwell on separate occasions between 2019 and 2023. A female bishop also told Channel 4 News she was sexually harassed by him. Police had concluded no further action was needed, while the Church of England said its investigation had found no case to answer. There had been widespread calls for the bishop to step aside after the programme aired, with church leaders calling his position untenable. At least 30 people have died during India's Kumbh Mela festival. Held every 12 years, the Kumbh Mela, which lasts over 6 weeks, is thought to be the largest religious gathering in the world, attracting tens of millions of people globally. The incident took place between 1 and 2 a.m. local time on Wednesday, when a group of pilgrims broke through barricades, trampling devotees waiting to take a dip in the river. Devotees believe bathing there cleanses sins and leads to salvation. The death toll remained unconfirmed for 12 hours after the incident, until a new news conference held by officials revealed at least 30 had died and 60 were injured. Despite the chaos, some devotees say they are determined to continue with their rituals and take a holy dip. At least 50 million people had bathed on Wednesday, bringing the total since the festival began years ago to 249.8 million people. See this video.
We've been seeing a stream of ambulances coming and going. There's news of a stampede. Something has horribly gone wrong.
काफी संख्या में लोग स्नान करने के लिए जा रहे थे और भीड़ भी काफी थी और लोग जल्दी जल्दी चल रहे थे।
जैसे आदमी यहाँ जा रहा है इधर से आ भी रहा है और धक्के के चक्कर में आधी पब्लिक गिर पड़ रही है, बच्चे तो समझ लो दबी जा रही हैं।
We are at the lost and found center and absolute chaos here. A lot of people got separated during what they're describing as a stampede-like situation.
Just take a look at the amount of stuff that is left behind here. Witnesses have told us that there were just hundreds and hundreds of people sleeping here on the riverbanks. And there was such a crush of people that they came over this way, and as ever in this kind of a crowd, one person gets pushed and it ended up that people got trampled on. We saw bodies being taken away from here on stretchers.
So it's been just over 4 hours since the crash happened. Tens of thousands of people are still streaming in, trying to take that holy dip.
So they are still determined to go and take a dip in those holy waters.
Some of them are nervous. They're asking about what happened and if it is safe to go to the confluence. There are a lot more police officials than there were before. So it's been 6 hours since the crash took place, but there hasn't been any official word. So there's an ambulance still coming. We have heard from sources that some crowd control measures have been put in. But when you speak to people around here, they all have the same question. What exactly happened? What happened to police and their protection and their promise to take care of devotees here?
Brick Court Chambers is rated as the second most prestigious barristers' chamber in London. South African advocate Jeremy Gauntlett called it his professional home in the UK, with his profile on the Chamber's website describing him as among the top counsel in the city. Now that profile has been quietly removed, while a media inquiry into Brick Court Chambers this week went unanswered. Gauntlett's career as one of the most high-flying international lawyers South Africa has ever known is over. The 74-year-old advocate announced in a letter sent to the country's leading legal bodies in late January that he had for some time been planning to retire from practice after what has been a long and fulfilling legal career, and that he would be doing so immediately. What has ended Gauntlett's career is a credible account of teen grooming and sexual abuse made public by a respected Wits academic, that's Witwatersrand University. The Daily Maverick has seen an email sent by Gauntlett in 2022 in which he acknowledged the validity of this account. He didn't respond to emailed questions this week. But that's only part of a much wider and extraordinarily dark story, one which began in the UK in the 1970s, ended up taking down one of the most powerful religious figures in the world, and now poses uncomfortable questions for Archbishop of Cape Town, Thabo Makgoba. By the 1970s, John Smyth was a well-known figure in the UK, a charismatic and prominent lawyer by profession, but he used much of his leisure time to groom teenage boys using Christianity as his cover. Smyth would have his victims enter a shed that he used specifically for the purpose. There he would strip them naked and savagely beat them with a cane while demanding that they prayed out loud. While he beat them, he would often groan with ecstasy. The beatings would last sometimes hundreds of lashes. When he was finished, Smyth would embrace them from behind, nuzzling their back and kissing their necks. The blood would be flowing down his victims' legs. Smyth would then apply lotion to their buttocks and give the victims an adult nappy to wear under their clothes so the bleeding was not visible. One victim, records author Greystone, had a beating that lasted 12 hours. Another eventually had to wear adult nappies round the clock with thick black trousers to disguise the seeping blood. Smyth groomed only sporty and good-looking boys. It was not the conventional sexual abuse that people might imagine. It was something more complex, writes Greystone. The beatings were regularly scheduled to boys Smyth gave Christian ministry to, in punishment for a whole range of sins, but with a tremendous emphasis on masturbation, which Smyth encouraged his victims to confess about at length. One boy attempted suicide on the eve of a planned beating, unable to handle the torture anymore, but equally incapable of seeing a way out. Smyth's actions became known to the Church of England relatively early on, as last year's Make-In report, also known as the John Smyth Review, has made clear. Although Smyth was not ordained in the Church, Greystone's book and the official investigation have established that he spent his time in the UK as a high-profile member of an Anglican parish where he counselled young men. He was trained and licensed as a lay reader in the Diocese of Winchester and carried out much of his abuse at the Iwerne holiday camps, which were set up to train attendees to be leaders in the Church of England, including the future Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. By the end of 1982, writes Greystone, at least 27 adults in the UK had a clear-sighted view of what John Smyth was doing. It was decided that Smyth had to be shipped out of the UK. The knowledge that he would almost certainly continue his abuse wherever he landed up seems to have been less of a concern than the reputational liability he posed to the Church while in the UK. And so, with the encouragement and financial support of church figures and rich barrister colleagues, Smyth headed off to southern Africa, first to Zimbabwe and then to South Africa. In Zimbabwe, where Smyth spent around 16 years, he would go on to abuse an estimated 90 boys. In South Africa, where Smyth spent the final 17 years of his life, we still don't know how many victims he had. The Right Reverend Rose Hudson Wilkin said the former most senior cleric in the Church of England, ex-Archbishop of Canterbury Justin Welby, had been chewed up by his critics. One commenter said, "The entire senior management of the C of E, and all churches, frankly, should have stepped down, as I suspect they were all complicit, unless they have spent the last 20 years vocally exposing abuse, which they clearly haven't." This has been Global Atheist News. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching.